7:39, time to go through the papers. We're joined this morning by the former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Newsom, and the Olympian Chris Akabusi. Welcome back to both of you. Chris, you want to kick off with the Metro. Clever headline, I have to say, from them, and it did make me smile first thing. Not a spare in the world, with a smiling picture of the King as not only Parliament back today, but the Royals back out on the Royal Beat.
Yeah, and what I love, you know, all the hullabaloo and story of the Prince, King Charles, keep calm, carry on. It's been extraordinary in the way that he has changed the monarchy in as much he meets people, and not that the Queen didn't, but I remember seeing a piece where the King was dancing with a Jewish contingent in Upper Mitzvah, you know, and it's a little bit more laid back than the Queen was. And I think this is the answer, that I'm getting on with my job, and this is probably the British way of modernising the monarchy, as opposed to where Prince Harry has gone with the sort of venting my spleen and telling the world about my private challenges.
So, Dawn, what is the King's, or what should the King's response to this be? Because he's going to be damned if he does, damned if he doesn't, in terms of an invite for his son Harry to his coronation.
I think I think Charles has always offered an olive branch, hasn't he, to Harry and Meghan. He did with the Queen's funeral, very inclusive, and he made a point of saying that Harry is very much loved. Harry and Meghan are both very much loved. So I think he should invite him. Whether Harry goes or not is another matter. But
well, if he invites him, that's more interviews, more books, more victimisation.
It's like, you know, the Queen never complain, never explain. We know that now. It's a motto. But as you say, damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. It's like whatever he does now is going to give more ammunition, if that's how we're regarding it, to Harry to get maybe yet another book out of it. And you'll be very wary about saying anything now, just in case it is going to be turned into another Netflix series or another book. It's just incredibly sad. I keep coming back to the word sad. I mean, that is what the bottom line is here, I think.
We learnt from that interview with Anderson Cooper that the brothers are no longer speaking, not even in text messages. In the Netflix documentary, you saw Harry's reaction when Wills sent him a text. That's not even happening. But he addressed the issue of never complain, never explain. He says it's just that. It was a motto. They did complain a lot, and they did explain through briefing the press. And as far as Harry's concerned, the family have written books themselves, but just not directly through that from their mouths.
But then he didn't actually give any examples. And one thing I wanted Tom Bradbury to do was say, like, okay, give me a specific example of what you are saying. And Tom, I mean, I thought he handled it quite well. I mean, it's very difficult considering he's a mate. But I thought, you know, give me examples of what you're saying. And there was never an example offered that actually now's right. Okay, yes, you're right. That was the situation there.
Are we just assuming that this was all just Meghan, that they're referring, because I think it's the Times and the Mail both leading on that the family are complicit in Meghan's suffering. And I think am I jumping 2 and 2 makes 5, or do you think that when we're talking about leaking, they're saying they didn't deny the allegations of bullying and all of these kinds of things? That's what he's got beef about, do you think?
Well, I mean, it's we don't know. This is the thing. I mean, I thought, you know, when Harry said there are 2 sides to every story, I sort of was watching that last night and I thought, well, yes, there are, but we're only going to hear your side. We're never going to hear your father's side or your brother's side. And you know,
well, we could go on talking about this all day, Chris, but I think there are more...
It's not good for your blood pressure, is it?
It's not good for, well, people just can't say what they really want to say on this, which is, you know...
Pipe down.
Button it now.
Well, that was Eamonn. That was both our first reaction this morning. It's
first
like,
reaction
shut up.
Morning. Shut up. I always think of, you know, when he talked about killing the Taliban and whatever, I thought of Captain Mannering towards Private Pike.
Yes.
You know, you stupid boy. You silly boy. What's it, you know, anyway. Chris, what is relevant to people is what is in front of them, the bills that are coming through the door in January, and you've picked out a story about mortgage rises. How bad are they?
Yeah, so the article talks about the mortgage rises. They don't mention the cost of living. Well, they mention the cost of living, but not COVID, austerity, and the war. But Bank of England are raising their basic rate, which affected mortgages. So the current group of people who are in houses, who are got their 2-year fixed mortgage, 5-year fixed mortgage coming up, etc., are experiencing these rises. So that in 2007 there was a 6%, 16% rise in mortgage rates now to 30%, but in 2024 it should go back down to 22%. Now, when I got my first house in 1980. About 1980 something.
1872, let's be honest here.
80 something. Interest rates were at 15%, and you were paying regularly £1,000, £1,500 quid for your mortgages. Mortgages are nowhere near that at the moment. So I think the upshot of the article is yes, they are rising, and some people, for example, can't afford to fix their fridge because of the rates of their mortgages increases. But get used to it, because this is what it was like 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, you say that, but the cost of living wasn't anything like it is now, and so it is actually a lot worse than it was in the 80s. A lot of people will say, especially for the youngsters.
And maybe when people bought in the 80s, they knew what to expect. They had that budgeted in, whereas this is an unexpected rise.
And I'll tell you what, the other difference between then and now is you could get 100% mortgage. You would have lenders willing to give you the actual total amount you needed to borrow. Kids today can't get that. You have to have a huge deposit, and you can't save up because of the cost of living.
But the reality is that you have got to factor that in now. You do know that mortgage prices are going up, although there is light at the end of the tunnel, because gas prices are going down, according to the article, and so that by 2024 that should reflect in the mortgage prices. Bank of England should take that into effect, so that, as I said, it will be 22% rather than the current 30% in 21-22.
Okay, Dawn, let's look at The Guardian and The Times now. Two health stories for two different papers there. Rishi Sunak talking about possibly sort of hinting at a possible pay deal, but the unions are meeting the government today, and the Health Secretary Steve Barclay expected to make a tranche of announcements on how they can tackle the challenge, not crisis.
No, it's Rishi actually denied yesterday. Well, he didn't deny. He didn't actually admit there was a crisis in the NHS. Everyone's going, mate, there seriously is a problem here. So yes, I mean, hopefully this could be good news for everybody today, Isabel, that we might have some kind of resolution to the health unions going on strike. And Pat Cullen, who's Senior Secretary of the Royal College of Nurses, has said that, you know, she's open to negotiations. And what it means is basically the PM is looking at offering a one-off cash payment to nurses and the lower paid medical staff to get them through this winter, and then hopefully start negotiations again for the 2023-2024 period, because they're not going to go back on the negotiations for last year. So in theory, it's good news for everybody. The second story in the Times is slightly more worrying, is immediate, something needs to be done immediately with people, bed blocking, and I hate that phrase, in hospitals. So the NHS will put the elderly into hotels to free up beds. This is a £200 million package going to be announced to put elderly and people that are medically fit, but there's not enough care home beds to be discharged into our either private healthcare hospitals or to hospitals or to hotels.
Well, they just can't put them in hotels. They've got to put staff. They've got to put staff in there as well.
Absolutely. This is the problem, Eamonn. I heard this horrific story at the weekend about a chap who was suffering from cancer at 71. He was medically able to leave hospital, but was discharged to like a hostel. And his daughter phoned up and to check what the facilities were, and he needed medical care because he just recovering from radiotherapy treatment, and there were none. And this was a hostel where they were also, I mean, I'm not having homeless people, they're also looking after homeless people.
Yeah, they've just also
my
been
dad's
used
very
for migrants,
vulnerable.
haven't they? Also, they were used for people that were having to isolate when they came back from international travel. The UK's hostel and hotel industry has been used by the government.
You can't go on holiday in a hotel.
What happened to all those Nightingale hospital beds?
This is exactly what Chris and I were saying. It's like, if a critical incident is declared in some health authorities at the moment, a critical incident, major national critical incident, which is declared during the pandemic, and that's what gave us the ability to build the Nightingale hospitals and have medical staff from the army actually running them. Now, if we declared a critical incident again, which sounds scarier than it actually is, it means you can do whatever you want overnight. So we could, in theory, do that again and surely resurrect the Nightingale hospitals.
But then you have to source beds, you have to have all the medical facilities. Whereas the idea is these hotels have beds in situ and a sort of skeleton infrastructure that can be adapted. I can see it's not a great idea.
It's not.
What else are you supposed to do? It gets 3,000 that's a quarter of those who are so-called bed blockers out of, the hospitals taking up beds for...
Well, we had the beds for the Nightingale hospitals during the pandemic. Well, where have they gone, Isabel?
Where
That's
have
the
they
problem.
gone? Yeah. And incidentally, where has COVID gone in China, Chris? Because this is Financial Times. So I see yesterday, and I see from this story, that China are saying, right, you can travel anywhere you want now around China. We've lifted quarantine requirements. But yet the rest of the world is now saying, well, if you're from China, we want to know if we want you to test for COVID, basically.
Yeah, that's what they're saying, but I think in reality, the world would very much like Chinese tourists back. I think, according to an article, Hong Kong as a first place that will get the influx of Chinese tourists. In the first half of this year, 18 million Chinese tourists will travel abroad in the first half of the year, followed by in the second half 40 million in the second half. Hong Kong, Japan and USA have very much missed the Chinese tourist industry. I'm sure UK talks about Harrods revamping its infrastructure and ensuring that it's got items fit for the Chinese market. So yeah, the authorities are saying the right thing when it comes to the testing, but ultimately I think industry, commerce, retail, tourism is very much glad that the zero policy that China had for the last 3 years has been lifted, and that they will be in, because it's the Chinese that are affected by COVID. If you believe the idea that we've had vaccinations and that we're vaccinated against various variants, and that now it's endemic and not a pandemic within the United Kingdom. We've got to get on, keep calm, carry on. It's like a common flu now. So it's not the local constituents that are at risk, it's the Chinese constituents that are at risk when they travel abroad and are exposed to more different coronavirus variants.
Okay. Chris, Dawn, thank you both very much indeed. We'll see you again in about 45 minutes' time.
Bless you.